Let's bring in Chris Johnston of NorthStar Bets. Chris, after that game one, do you believe that Sheldon Keefe needs to make any adjustments for game two?
I don't think there need to be big adjustments. I would expect the way we saw that game play out in terms of shifting Matthews and Marner back together. I would think you're going to see a lot more of that in game two. That means Tavares and Nylander, are going to have to get going. Particularly Nylander has not, put up points here in the last 3 games in the playoffs. I think there's some emphasis to find him. But, really for the Leafs, I'm not sure that this is a tactical or structural realignment that's required as much as, they need to execute better. And, that's really been the focus. And I think, ironically, it's not so much about scoring goals or doing anything that way. It's more about not making mistakes that see the puck end up in their net. That's been consistent from the Leafs coach, that he feels that the errors that weren't there in the Tampa series presented themselves in game one, and that the margin between a win and a loss was not that big for Toronto in the first game of the series.
CJ, I want to ask you about late goals with the Leafs. They've given up 6 goals in the last 3 minutes of periods in the playoffs. The latest one coming to Carter Verhaeghe, which basically ended that game one for them. Is this something that the Leafs are talking about, and how do you change that?
They're talking about it so little, at least publicly, that I wasn't even aware of the stat. I mean, now that you say it, I can, think of a few goals late. And certainly in that Tampa series, there's a couple games, some power play goals right before the buzzer. But, I don't know that again, look, it's very possible behind the scenes that's something they're talking about. But, I haven't heard much of a discussion in that way. But, certainly, I think that they have to play hard through the periods. And what this team has said, which I think is quite honest, is that they haven't been on their game enough in the playoffs. And they've only led 22% of the minutes they've played. They've been playing from behind a lot. It's not a winning recipe really against any team, but Florida now is 5-0 in the playoffs when they score first in a game and get the play from ahead. I think they can play a little more loose and free and let Matthew Tkachuk go and do what he does. And so, the emphasis for Toronto, I know, is having a real strong start tonight, getting a lead and being able to maybe choke some of the energy out of the game rather than chasing it the whole time.
Chris, Ilya Samsonov showed in round 1 the ability to flush a stinker game and bounce back in game 2. Again, yesterday he gave a very wholesome response that he's going to go home, have some food, get some sleep. The sun's going to come up tomorrow. Can you just speak on the mentality of the Leafs netminder and his ability to, just forget the last game and just focus on what the task ahead is?
I think he's got the perfect demeanor, Ilya Samsonov, to be the starting goaltender for a team like the Leafs, where obviously there's questions every game. Whether it's good or bad, there's going to be scrutiny on your play. There's going to be some highs and lows in there. I mean, you heard the fans chanting his name in the last game as well. So, there's signs here that he's being loved, but he's very even keel. Really almost a friendly goalie, and that's not to throw goalies around the league under the bus, but being in dressing rooms consistently on game days, I can tell you a lot of goalies almost don't want to make eye contact with anyone. I think that there's a certain focus required, to play at this high level of any sport, but especially for that position. But, even, this morning before game 2, he didn't do any interviews, but he's just saying hi to everyone, giving smiles and winks. So, I don't think too much bothers him. I think that mindset helps him put the occasional tough game behind him and the tough goal behind him. And let's face it, you got to live in the moment. Nothing's going to go your way the whole way in the playoffs. You've got to, just find a way to get back to your best. And I think Samsonov has a really good track record, at least in his time in Toronto, of bouncing back from losses and poor efforts.
Chris, the story of Matthew Knies is incredible to me. I feel like maybe it needs to be getting more play. I mean, if you look at the left wingers on the Leafs right now, you can say Matthew Knies is arguably the best left winger on the Toronto Maple Leafs. This is a guy who only has 4 regular season games under his belt. I'm just curious, your opinion, how has he been able to fit in so well at such an important time for the Leafs?
Well, I think the fact that he's physically big and strong helps. I mean, when you look at any young player entering the league, there's going to be adjustments, right? There's going to be mistakes. You got to get used to playing with men and the pace and all that sort of thing. But I think, most young players also have to deal with the fact they're just physically not capable to engage in battles. Well, that's not a case for Knies. He's 6'2". He's over 200 pounds. He's done really well in playing against along the wall, and I think has been comfortable there. And then you add on top of that, he's just got a lot of confidence. He's got a little bit of swagger, and I don't mean arrogance by any stretch. He's a very nice young man, but he's got a lot of belief in what he can do. And so he's come here and put his best foot forward. And in 9 NHL games, it's hard to quibble with the results. There's been to me, what's really stood out too is, you see him make a mistake in game 6 in Tampa, doesn't clear the puck. Ultimately it ends up in the net off Steven Stamkos. And that would be deflating for anyone. But there he is in overtime, winning a battle behind the net to get the puck to John Tavares before he wins the series. Same thing in game 1 against the Panthers. He was on the ice for a goal against, and 11 seconds later, right off the face-off that ensues, he's scoring a first NHL goal of his career. I mean, he just doesn't seem much. Maybe it's sort of similar to Samsonov. He doesn't just seem to get too bogged down by the things that don't go his way. And, so much has been great for him. And, we're at the point now whenever we're talking about a Leafs lineup change. I mean, I just don't think that one is even on the table. Like he's in my eyes, firmly part of the team as long as he's healthy. And that's a testament to him because he joined at the late stage of the season and made a big jump from college.
Chris, when we're looking at the following days of game 1, physical play has been a big talking point. Of course, Matthew Tkachuk front and center. I saw a lot of Leaf players talking about how, we'll be physical, but we're not going to overexert it. Do you find this Leaf team has been really focused on trying to kill the narrative that they're not a tough team this playoffs?
Well, I mean, I think it's gone to me. I mean, you look at what Kyle Dubas did at the trade deadline. There's you can draw a line from one player to the next. I mean, Noel Acciari, for example, finishes all his checks, one of the leaders in hits for this team. Luke Schenn, obviously the human eraser, is not afraid of the physical stuff. We saw him get in a fight in the first round against Tanner Jeannot as well. Ryan O'Reilly isn't afraid to engage physically, maybe not throwing, big checks that get on the highlight reel, but is not afraid to get in the dirty areas and win pucks and win battles. So, I think the Leafs have changed who they are, even really from midway through this season, let alone the prior seasons. And, I think they can handle a physical game. That being said, I don't know that they're ever going to, truly go pound for pound with the Panthers in that regard. I'm not sure they should too. And I think that's the line that they have to look for is certainly not shying away for it, not missing an opportunity to finish a body check, but almost not getting distracted by it and playing in a way that's outside of their character. And so, I don't know that that was necessarily an issue in game 1. We did see, Jake McCabe at one point kind of got out of position after throwing a big check and the puck went down the other end of the ice and they scored. But, by and large, I thought the Leafs held their own and, certainly put Matthew Tkachuk on his rear end a couple times. And I'm sure that's part of the game plan too, because he's been going so well for Florida.
We're speaking to Chris Johnston of NorthStar Bets. Chris, if there's one person Leaf fans are really frustrated with, it's William Nylander. I think the question they keep asking is, what the hell is going on with this guy? He's still got 7 points in the playoffs, but there are times where he's just kind of disengaged. There's some defensive lapses in his game right now. Game 1 wasn't the best for him in terms of being under the spotlight. How does Sheldon Keefe get the best out of this guy? How does he motivate him?
Well, I think it's helpful that they have a long working relationship together. They've known each other a long time, which probably makes things a little bit easier. But I do think it's a constant challenge with William Nylander. I mean, the skill is supreme. We've known this. He's been in the league a long, long time. But there are times that he's frankly disengaged on the details and on, the competitiveness you need in his own end in particular. Loses assignments, doesn't dig in and make a play defensively. Now he's a takeaway master too. I mean, there's just lots of different ways to get it done. It doesn't all have to just satisfy the eye test here. But, I think quite clearly in what we've seen in the last few games is there's been some tough moments negatively, and those get more spotlight and attention because he hasn't put a puck in the net since game 2 against the Lightning. He hasn't produced a point yet in the last 3 games. And so, this is kind of the yin and the yang, or the good and the bad, if you want to call it. I mean, whatever you want to look at it, every player has a range. It's not all great and it's not all bad, but there just seems to be some extremes, I think, with Nylander might be the best way to put it, because, some of the defensive disengagement is just hard to miss. At the same time, he has 3 points in game 2. Would it stun anybody? He got benched in one of those games in Tampa, and then you look up at the end of the night, he had 3 assists and they made that 3-goal comeback and, got an assist on the overtime winner as well. So, a bit of a riddle inside of a mystery inside of an enigma is William Nylander. I think the one thing that is not a mystery right now is the Leafs need more from him offensively. And I think the coaching staff has been in his ear that he's got to get harder to the net, play with more authority, and really not discouraged for anything he's doing. Because if you look at it, he's got 14 shots in these last 3 games. If he continues to get that many looks, I think it's only a matter of time.
Do you think he's affected by being juggled throughout the lines?
Maybe a little bit. I think that's fair. I think it's a question to actually ask of all the Leafs top players. The Leafs might change their lines more frequently than any other team in the league. It's really a game by game situation. We've seen Nylander with Matthews a lot. Obviously, Marner and Matthews being back together to start game 2. I mean, it does there's a lot of up and down, and that can be like anything. That can be a positive because I think Leafs don't have one lineup that works perfectly, but I think it can be difficult on some of the individuals. It also really hasn't clicked for whatever reason with him and John Tavares as much, I think. And so, he's in a tougher spot now going into this game because we are asking these questions of him. When's he going to produce? And he's probably not on an optimal line to do so. And in addition to that, back in the Tampa series, he was dropped down to the second power play unit with Ryan O'Reilly placing him on top. So there goes another opportunity where an offensive player like Nylander can, there's no easy points this time of year, but get easier points potentially on in terms of power play time. So he's got to dig in and find a way. And we just haven't seen that happen yet. And it could happen today and not happen in 2 days' time. I think, I call him as unpredictable as a weather pattern. It's just really hard to know. It's hard to know exactly what's going to get there. I don't make light of it. Because the top end skill is so high. I understand his value to the team. It's just, he's almost a wild card for the Leafs to me. It's just, if he's doing something positive, it can be tremendously positive. And, the flip side is also the case.
Yeah, even if he just shows up for minimal parts of the game, he still creates unbelievable chances as we saw in game one.
Absolutely. Now, Matthew Tkachuk gets all the shine when we talk about the Florida Panthers right now. But if we were to take Tkachuk out of the equation, who else on the Panthers really stood out for you in game one?
Sam Bennett. I think that we're talking a lot about Tkachuk and for good reason. Great personality. He's now leading the league in points, has 3 assists on the night. But, Bennett, I think, has been a huge boost for him coming back in the lineup. Remember, late in the regular season, he was out injured when the Panthers started their charge to just get into the playoffs. And so this is more than just a one player or even one line team. I mean, we're not even talking about Sasha Barkov. In years gone by has been kind of the primary option for them offensively in their lineup. And now, you can balance him on a different line. Carter Verhaeghe does nothing but score goals and big goals for the Panthers. He's got 6 game winners out of their last 9 playoff wins, and including the big goal he scored when the Leafs were starting to mount a comeback in game one. He only needed one look to switch things back in his team's favor. So there's a lot in that lineup, and then I think I'd be remiss if I didn't highlight Sergei Bobrovsky because he's kind of comes from the same cut as I would say of the William Nylander conversation. He's been so good at times in his career, and he's had some big lows as well. Well, he's looking like he's back in 2019 form based on what we saw to end the Boston series and to start this one with Toronto. And, if that's the case, that's a great thing for the Panthers.
Yeah, scary for the Leafs too if they don't get anything here in game 2. Chris, thanks so much for doing this. Enjoy the game tonight.
Can't wait, guys. We'll talk soon.